I welcome all of you to this video lecture series on computational fluid dynamics, development, application analysis. This lecture is on solution methodology on a uniform and non-uniform Cartesian grid for the topic on computational heat convection. The details of this lecture can be found in the chapter 6 and 7 of the companion textbook on Introduction to CFD, Development, Application Analysis. The present lecture is the part 2 of the topic 4 on computational heat convection, where in part 1, in the previous lecture, the physical law based finite volume method and numerical criteria was presented for computational heat convection. In this lecture, the two types of solution methodology, flux based solution methodology and coefficient of linear equation based solution methodology will be presented. Flux based solution methodology will be presented on a uniform Cartesian grid, whereas the coefficient of linear equation based methodology will be presented on a non-uniform Cartesian grid. So in the flux based solution, when you talk of solution methodology, the solution methodology consists of three elements. First is solution method, second is implementation detail, third is solution algorithm. So the flux based solution methodology was presented in the previous topic as well as is presented here in this topic for explicit method, whereas coefficient of linear equation based methodology will be presented later for both explicit and implicit method. This implementation details presents the nut and bolts for the development of the product. The product that we are considering here is the CFD code or a software development, whereas in implementation details, the loops that are involved, the data structure that are needed to develop the computer program for CFD is presented. In the previous topic on computational heat conduction, we had seen the fluxes for corresponding to conduction. Now here when we talk of convection, it's a combination of conduction and advection, where the advection leads to an enthalpy transport. I had mentioned in my previous topic, there are two transport mechanisms, random motion of molecule based diffusion transport and bulk motion based advection transport. So the conduction corresponds to the diffusion transport and the advection comes into picture when there is an onset of flow. And when you take the product of mass flow rate, specificate with and temperature, you get enthalpy flow rate. So the convection flux corresponds to the combination of conduction flux and enthalpy flux. So when we talk of grid points for convection flux, the grid point is same that was presented earlier for conduction fluxes, but that grid points now also acts for the enthalpy flux as shown here. This is the simplest form of the grid generation. If you draw equispaced vertical lines and equispaced horizontal lines, the pixels or the grid points located at the centroid of the control volume in a finite volume method. So these are the internal grid points. However, to apply the boundary conditions, we also need grid points at the boundary of the domain. So these are the grid points at the left boundary, bottom boundary, the right boundary, and top boundary. These are the grid points for temperature. And this is the running indices to store the temperature with a data structure as matrix. So I and J correspond to the running indices. They give us the address of an element in the matrix as a data structure for the storage of temperature. So this is a grid point for temperature, and this grid point was earlier shown for conduction heat fluxes in the earlier topic. However, for convection for this topic, along with conduction flux, we also encounter enthalpy flux. So note that this is a grid point for Qx as well as Hx. This is so the yellow circle is the grid point for temperature. The green square is not only the grid point for Qx but also for Qx and Hx. And the red inverted triangle, which was presented as grid style or pixel for the conduction fluxes in the y direction in the previous topic, is presented here as the grid point also for conduction flux in the y direction Hy. So these are the grid points for Qy and Hy. The combination of conduction flux and enthalpy flux gives you the convection flux. This is a computational stencil. The flux-based solution methodology consists of two steps. In the first step, for convection, we need to calculate the convection flux, and to calculate the convection flux, we calculate the conduction fluxes that was already presented in the previous lecture. So this is the expression by which you calculate the conduction fluxes, where you calculate Qx at green square and Qy at red inverted triangle. And to calculate the enthalpy flux, in the previous lecture, the enthalpy flux involves the value of the temperature as compared to conduction flux, which involves the normal gradient of temperature at the phase center. Now, to calculate the temperature at a phase center in an enthalpy flux, in the previous topic, the second approximation presents advection scheme, where various schemes were presented, like first order upwind scheme, central difference scheme, second order upwind scheme, and quick scheme. So to calculate the enthalpy flux, in the previous lecture, a general formulation was presented, where to calculate the enthalpy flux on a surface, it was expressed in terms of enthalpy flux consists of the product of mass flux and the specific heat and temperature. And the product of mass flux and temperature was presented in previous lecture, that rather than using an if statement, because in the previous lecture it was presented that to calculate the temperature at a phase center, it is based on the direction of mass flux. So rather than using an if statement, this is the general formulation that was presented in previous lecture to calculate the enthalpy flux, where temperature at a phase is expressed in terms of its downstream neighbor, upstream neighbor, and upstream of upstream neighbor. Such as if you consider the east phase, then if the mass flux is in the positive direction, then capital in the later after this I'll show you the expression for enthalpy flux in terms of the neighboring temperature. So to calculate the temperature of east surface when the mass flux is in the positive direction, I'll show you the expression for TE plus. So what I'm saying is, if this is a general expression, now if you want to use this expression for the east surface, that too for the flow in the positive x direction, for mx, so for me in the positive x direction, you will get TE plus, and for me in the negative direction, you will get TE minus. So TE plus, downstream neighbor will be TE, T capital E, this TU will be TP, and upstream of upstream neighbor will be TW. Okay, so that will give you TE plus. If you want to calculate TE minus, then you have to substitute the appropriate downstream, upstream, and upstream of upstream. So if the mass flux on the surface is in the negative x direction, then the downstream neighbor will be P, upstream neighbor will be capital E, and upstream of upstream neighbor will be E, capital E, the double capital E. Okay, so this is the expression for TE plus, and this is the expression for TE minus, where in TE plus, as I mentioned, this is the downstream neighbor, this is the upstream neighbor, and this is the upstream neighbor. If the mass flux is negative, then the downstream neighbor is TP, this is the upstream, and this is the upstream of upstream. So also note that this W1, W2, W3 are the weights corresponding to an advection scheme. W1 is the weight for the downstream neighbor, W2 is the weight for the upstream neighbor, W3 is the weight for the upstream of upstream neighbor. In the previous lecture, what are the values of these weights were presented for the various advection schemes. For a first order upwind scheme, W1 and W3 is equals to 0 and W2 is equals to 1. So when you substitute the appropriate values of T, so in this expression represents that after substituting the appropriate, like for this, to get this expression, you have to substitute TE plus and TE minus using this expression. Similarly, for calculating at west phase, you have to substitute TW plus and TW minus, and you'll get this expression. So these are the expanded form of the expression corresponding to the various surfaces. For a uniform grid, note that these weights are constant quantity, whereas they vary for a non-uniform grid. That will be presented later in this lecture. After you have calculated the conduction fluxes and enthalpy fluxes, then you have to calculate the convection fluxes. The the convection then the second step, this is the disguise from the algebraic equation, where on the left hand side you get the rate of change of enthalpy, and on the right hand side you have total heat gained by convection. Now this total heat gained by convection is equals to total heat gained by conduction minus total heat lost by advection. Note that the expression that we have written here for total heat by conduction, this corresponds to an influx, because here you see west minus east, south minus north, whereas for advection it is east minus west and north minus south. So the this is the total heat that is being calculated for conduction corresponds to an influx, whereas for advection it corresponds to an outflux. So this, so when you have an influx, this term represents total heat gained by conduction. When you have outflux, this term represents total heat lost by advection. So this term is on the left hand side, and when you bring it to the right hand side, you get a minus sign here, and minus of heat lost by advection, minus of loss become gain. So this is the total heat gained by conduction plus total heat gained by advection, that is equal to total heat gained by convection. So in the first step of the flux-based solution methodology, you calculate this conduction fluxes and enthalpy fluxes, and using this conduction fluxes and enthalpy fluxes, you calculate the respective capital Q values, and from that you calculate the total heat gained by convection, which is given by this expression, and this is the expanded form of each of these terms. So using this expression, note that in the right hand side, all the term consists of superscript n, which are the values corresponding to the previous time step. So knowing the temperature from the previous time step, you can, in the first step, you can calculate this conduction fluxes and enthalpy fluxes using the temperature of the previous time step. Then you calculate this capital Q values for using the previous time using these heat fluxes corresponding to the previous time level value. And here also you can note that the total heat gained by conduction corresponds to the temperature distribution of the previous time step. This is a fully explicit method where you can use this equation explicitly, where you have only one unknown on the left hand side and all the terms on the right hand side are known from the previous time level. After the solution method, for the flux-based solution methodology, the solution method was corresponding to explicit method. Here the implementation details are presented. So this is the data corresponding to the initial condition and boundary conditions. So you know the data for the temperature distribution for the first picture from the initial condition and boundary condition. And using the data from the first picture, you can obtain the data for the second picture, which is spaced by a time interval of delta t. So in the flux-based solution methodology, in the first step, you calculate the conduction fluxes as well as the enthalpy fluxes. Note that the solution methodology is presented here for 2D Cartesian coordinate system. So that's why the fluxes components are shown as qx, qy, and hx, hy. Also note that the the green square that I had shown in the previous slide corresponds to 5 in the x, 6 in the x direction and 5 in the y direction. And the red inverted triangles were 5 in the x direction and 6 in the y direction, where this flux grid points are shown at the boundary of the domain also. However, a point to note here is while calculating the enthalpy fluxes, you will use the advection scheme for the enthalpy fluxes grid points which are inside the domain. For the enthalpy, to calculate the enthalpy flux at the boundary of the domain, we don't need to use any advection scheme because the boundary temperature is already calculated from a boundary condition. So from the boundary condition, the fact that from the boundary condition, you already know the temperature at the boundary grid point. So there is no need to use any advection scheme. So the advection scheme is used, although this loop is used for the grid point of these fluxes which are inside as well as boundary. But while calculating this enthalpy fluxes at the boundary, we do not need to use any advection scheme due to the fact that we know the temperature at the boundary from the boundary condition. So we use the boundary temperature to calculate the enthalpy fluxes at the boundary of the domain. Whereas to calculate the conduction fluxes, we use the expression that was given in the previous slide, even to calculate the conduction fluxes at the boundary. So after you've calculated the fluxes, you calculate the total heat gained by convection and the temperature for the next time step. So this is a two-step methodology where you obtain the data for using the data from the first picture, you obtain the data or the temperature distribution for the second picture. And from the second picture, you obtain the temperature distribution for third and so on. And this picture by picture gives you the movie for temperature distribution for heat convection. Note that in this problem, we want to decouple the fluid flow. So even though the title of this topic is heat convection, but the fluid flow that is involved in terms of the mass flow rate or mass flux, you are given a problem where you already know the velocity field. So the velocity field is also already prescribed to you. So here in this topic, we are avoiding the solution of for fluid flow, and we are considering a cases of heat convection where the fluid flow is prescribed to you, it is given to you. After this explicit method and implementation details for the flux-based solution methodology, now let us discuss the solution algorithm, and thereafter I'll present the example problem. So the first step of the solution algorithm for the 2D unsteady convection is a user input, where you have to enter the thermophysical property of the fluid involved in convection. In this case, you will need the density, specific heat, and thermal conductivity. The geometrical parameter, the length of the domain, length and height of the domain, L1 and L2. For uniform grid, you have to enter the maximum number of grid points in the X and Y direction. You have to enter the initial condition and boundary condition parameter. Whenever you apply this initial and boundary condition, there are certain parameters that you have to prescribe. The governing parameter in this problem is as I mentioned earlier, that you have a prescribed flow field. So you have to enter the velocity field, and using this velocity field, you will calculate the mass flux later on. Since you are solving for unsteady state convection, so this is the steady state convergence tolerance that you have to prescribe as a user. And for a convection problem, you have to select the advection scheme for the solution. There are many advection schemes, as I mentioned. So whenever you develop a computer program, you have to give the because for a particular program, we'll use a particular advection scheme that a user has to choose. So in this step, the user has to select an advection scheme for the solution. So after the user input in a uniform grid, you can calculate the geometrical parameters, such as the width of the control volume in the X direction and the Y direction. And you have to calculate the stability criteria based time step for the explicit method. Note that in the previous lecture, it was mentioned that we do not have an expression for stability criteria for convection. We have expression for the stability criteria delta T corresponding to pure conduction and pure advection. And so we get two delta T values, and we take the minimum of the two. So we obtain delta T using the grid Fourier number criteria that is corresponding to conduction. And for advection, we apply a criteria that is called a CFL criteria. And so we get two delta T corresponding to each of those criteria, and we take the minimum of the two, and that we use here. However, I had also mentioned in my previous lecture that delta T that you obtain for convection is not guaranteed to converge. So you take the minimum of the two delta T, and if the solution does not converge, use a time step less than the computed value till you achieve convergence. So here you have to use trial and error if the delta T value which you obtain from the stability criteria does not work. For the temperature, apply the initial condition and boundary condition for those grid points which are subjected to the Dirichlet boundary condition. Thereafter, using the prescribed velocity field, you calculate the mass fluxes in the x and y direction, where mx will involve u velocity and my will involve v velocity. Since the velocity field in general can be varying at various grid points, note that these mass fluxes are calculated at the phase centers, that is the green square and the red inverted triangle. And since the velocity can be varying all over the domain, so this mx and my is represented as a two-dimensional matrix in a 2D problem. After this, you apply for boundary conditions for those boundary grid points which are subjected to non-Dirichlet boundary conditions. I have mentioned in my earlier lecture that the implementation of boundary conditions, we have two different steps in the solution algorithm, where this non-Dirichlet boundary condition is within the loop for the time. And before we go for the next time step computation, we store the value of the present time step into another matrix. So we set t old is equals to t. This will be t old I comma j is equals to this t I comma j for all the control volumes. The flux-based methodology is a two-step methodology. So in the first step, you compute the conduction and enthalpy flux at all the phase center that I have presented earlier through equations as well as implementation. In the implementation detail, I have presented the loops that you will use to calculate qx and hx on green square, qy and hy on the red inverted triangle. And using this conduction fluxes, you can obtain total heat gained by conduction. Using this enthalpy fluxes, you can obtain total heat lost by advection. And when you take the difference of the two, you get total heat gained by convection. And finally, you can obtain the temperature using the equation as well as the loops that were presented earlier in the implementation details. So after, for a particular time step, once you obtain the new temperature that is corresponding to n+1, then you have to check for steady state criteria. So in a convection, this is the expression that is used use for the checking the convergence, where we take the non-dimensional gradient of non-dimensional temperature. So this is a non-dimensional time-wise gradient of temperature, where which is expressed in this form. Note that in conduction, we do not have any velocity scale. So we use thermal diffusivity to obtain a velocity scale because thermal diffusivity has a unit of meter square per second. So the velocity scale in conduction was defined as alpha by LC, whereas in convection, you are given a velocity field. So you have a velocity scale. So using this velocity scale, we define a term which is called as a length scale based Courant number, UC delta T by LC. So this is the length scale based Courant number. And these are the dimensional values of the temperature from the previous two time step, and this delta T is the characteristic temperature difference for a particular problem. So this is the non-dimensional temperature gradient with respect to time, which is we call as unsteadiness. And we have used a similar expression in conduction, that instead of this UC, we had alpha by LC. So in conduction, it was alpha delta T by LC square that we called as Fourier number, time step based Fourier number. Here, note that since we know the velocity scale, instead of Fourier number, we are using the Courant number. If the unsteadiness is greater than epsilon, then you have to go back to the step not 4. Here it should be 5, which corresponds to this step where so this should be 5. So if it has not converged, means if it's not reached to a steady state, this is a condition to check for steady state. If this epsilon is like practically 0. So if you have a non-zero unsteadiness, then you have to go back to step 5 and continue till this condition is obeyed. Although this topic is on convection, but convection is made up of conduction plus advection. The companion book presents separate chapter on advection and convection, whereas this video lecture presents it as a single topic. So I am presenting the example problem separately for pure advection and convection. whenever you talk of any product development, it's always a component by component development. So you can consider like conduction as the first component and advection as the second component. And when you combine these two components, you get a third component, which is called as convection. So in the previous topic on computational heat conduction, you can develop a computer program and test it. So you are developing the first component as well as testing it. So we do component by component development as well as testing, and then this way we go ahead with our development. So for a pure advection, this is an example problem. Let us suppose you have a hot layer of the fluid. So there is a fluid which is moving. Let us suppose this is a plate above which there is a hot fluid which is moving, and below this plate there is a cold fluid. So this is the point where these two fluids are meeting. Okay, so in reality, it is expected that the temperature will gradually, there will be a mixing and there will be a gradual change in temperature wherever these two streams of fluid are meeting. So these two streams of fluid are meeting on this line, and near this line there will be a mixing that will initiate, that will lead to decrease in the temperature of hot layer and increase in the temperature of cold layer. So this is a region where you observe a temperature gradient. Above this, the temperature is constant, a larger value. Below this, the temperature is a smaller value, a constant value. But there is a region in which there is a gradient of temperature. This is a case where this is a more frequently observed cases. But for pure advection, we have a situation which I had mentioned earlier, that the fluid is moving with extremely large velocities. So if the fluid is moving with extremely large velocities, then the strength of advection which will be substantially larger as compared to that for conduction, and you will encounter no gradient. Instead, you observe a sharp change in the temperature from that of the cold fluid to the hot fluid. So in a pure advection, there is no mixing between the two layers as far as the heat transport is concerned, and you have a it's like here you have a no diffusion. When you have a temperature, this is a characteristic of a diffusion. The random motion of the molecules leads to the transport of heat, and there is a diffusion phenomenon. So in this case, you have a non-zero diffusion, and in this case, you have a zero diffusion. The non-zero diffusion lead you to convection. So this is a combination of conduction as well as advection, where in this case, the diffusion is close to zero and you have pure advection. I mentioned in my previous lecture that pure advection corresponds to flow at an extremely large velocities, which is more of a hypothesis rather than reality. In most of the situations, we find this. However, when we are working in any computational course, we have the luxury to define a hypothetical problem and to test corresponding to this hypothetical problem. So note that we are taking a problem where the cold layer is moving with a very large, both cold and hot layer are moving with large velocities, and there is no mixing between the two layers, and the hot layer continues to have the larger temperature as it is flowing over the colder fluid, and you have a sharp temperature gradient at this point where these two layers are meeting. So here you can see there is a sharp change in temperature from the cold fluid to the hot fluid. This is a very severe test case for any for any numerical algorithm. So this is the situation. If you work in this coordinate system, here it is shown as x prime, y prime, then this becomes a 1D advection problem, because if you because the upper layer is moving with a constant velocity, constant temperature. Each layer is moving with the same temperature. There is no change in the temperature between the hot fluid and the cold fluid at the juncture. So this is a 1D advection problem. However, if we want to make this as a 2D advection problem, then what we do is that we rotate the coordinate system. So this was the original coordinate system x prime y prime. So if we rotate it by 45 degree, let us suppose this is the coordinate system x and y, where now this fluid is moving along the diagonal. So this is like the diagonal, and these are our domain, which I will show you separately as shown here. So this is the so in the xy coordinate system, if I draw x as horizontal and y as vertical, so this is in the x prime y prime coordinate system, and if I rotate this x prime y prime by 45 degree, I am getting a new coordinate system xy, and corresponding to that coordinate system, this xy, where x is the horizontal direction here, and in this coordinate system, and y is the vertical direction. So in this computational domain, you can see that the fluid is the hot layer is flowing above the diagonal. This is like what is shown as diagonal. The hot fluid is moving above the diagonal and the cold fluid is moving below the diagonal. And as I had mentioned in the problem of, I had taken a previous, in my earlier lectures, I had shown you that if you're standing between ice and fire, and if the flow is from the ice side at extremely large velocities, I have mentioned the extremely large velocities corresponds to a pure advection, where if the flow is from the ice side, you feel a temperature close to 0 degree centigrade. And in case of pure advection, when the flow is from the fire side, you feel a temperature close to 100 degrees centigrade. So in this case, that was a 1D advection. Here I am talking about a 2D advection. So in a 2D advection, it is like this. We are defining a hypothetical problem where let us suppose this boundary is maintained at a temperature, hot temperature TH. This wall is maintained as cold temperature TC. So the fluid which is crossing the hot wall will carry the temperature of the hot wall as it's moving along. Okay, so these are the fluids which will be hitting this left boundary, which is maintained at TH, and they will carry the temperature of TH. So that way, above the diagonal, the analytical solution is the temperature will be TH. Whereas below the diagonal, the fluid that is, note that these fluids are moving at an angle of 45 degree, and the domain that we have taken is a square domain. So when the fluid which is moving below the diagonal, that they will hit the bottom wall, which is maintained at a cold temperature Tc, and below the diagonal you have a temperature distribution corresponding to the cold fluid. So here in this case, the analytical solution is across the diagonal for a pure 2D advection problem. There is a sharp change in the temperature uh, that is shown here by red color and blue color. So this is the problem that we'll consider for developing a computer program for pure advection as the second component of our product development. Here, let us suppose you have already developed your program for conduction, 2D conduction, and here you will develop a program for 2D advection. And not only you develop, you will also test it independently, and then you will combine these two to develop your program for convection. Later on, we will use various advection schemes like first order upwind scheme, second order upwind, and quick scheme for solving this problem. And I will show you that first order upwind scheme leads to certain numerical diffusion, whereas this quick and second order upwind scheme lead to certain unboundedness in the solution. Note that our advection scheme was involving the one-dimensional interpolation or extrapolation procedure, whereas we are talking of a 2D advection. So since our approximation involved 1D extrapolation and interpolation, it leads to certain inaccuracies that is reflected later on in the example problem, which I'll show you. However, as you keep refining the grid, the solution approaches towards the analytical solution that is shown here. So what I mean is that if you refine the grid for any advection schemes, you will approach towards this capturing the step change in the temperature for pure advection. So this is the problem where this is a square domain, and this is the left boundary which is maintained at a temperature of 100 degrees centigrade. Bottom boundary is maintained at 0 degrees centigrade. This is the column of fluid. Let's suppose this is water, and the flow is inclined at an angle of 45 degrees in a square domain. So all the fluid while flowing, those fluids which are hitting the left wall, they will carry a temperature of TH, and those fluids which are hitting the bottom wall will carry a temperature of TC. So this is the analytical solution where across the diagonal there is a sharp change in the temperature. This is the example problems corresponding to example 6.1 in the chapter 6 on computational heat advection. This was corresponding to explicit method and flux-based solution methodology of CFD development testing on a uniform grid. So this example problem was presented in a non-dimensional form where the temperature, non-dimensional temperature is represented in this form. Where non-dimensional temperature is written as temperature T minus T south boundary divided by temperature west boundary minus south boundary. So on the left wall or the west boundary, when you put T is equals to T west boundary, so here you have theta is equals to 1 and here you have theta is equals to 0. So this is a hypothetical test problem corresponding to a water column of length and height same as 10 meter and density of this is the density specific of the water. Let us consider the velocity is 5 meters per second, and this problem was solved on a uniform grid of 12 by 12 and with a convergence tolerance of steady state convergence tolerance of 10 to the power minus 4. This is the grid point distribution that has been shown, where the yellow circles are the grid points for temperature. Green squares are the grid point for mx. Sorry, this should be hx, and red inverted triangles are for my and hy. These are also the grid points for qx, and this is also the grid points for qy. Okay, so all the fluxes in the x direction, mx, qx, and hx, green square are grid point for those, and these red inverted triangles are grid points for my, qy, and hy. This is the velocity, uniform velocity that has been prescribed. We are defining a non-dimensional velocity u by u infinity, and u infinity, so at the inlet, this is equal to 1. Note that when you have the non-dimensional velocity as the flow is inclined at an angle of 45 degree, and here note that its magnitude is √2 times of u infinity. So this will lead to velocity in the x direction, which is u infinity. Velocity in the y direction is also u infinity. So the non-dimensional velocity will be capital U is equals to 1 and v is equals to 1. So the horizontal velocity, which is given by this, will be non-dimensional value will be 1, and the vertical velocity which will be coming from here will also be 1. These are the in an advection problem. Note that you are given the boundary condition at not all the boundaries, but you are given the boundary conditions at 2 out of the 4 boundaries. So in this case, you are given the boundary condition above the west wall and the south wall. West wall is TH, and when we have defined a non-dimensional temperature, theta non-dimensional temperature on the west wall comes out to be 1. So this is the expression, discretized form of the expression to for the implementation of boundary condition on the left wall. So all this blue circle, the non-dimensional temperature is 1 on the west boundary, and on the south boundary, all the non-dimensional temperatures for all this blue circle is 0. This is the computational stencil if you are using the first order upwind or central difference scheme. However, if you use higher order schemes like second order upwind and quick scheme, then you may need upstream of upstream neighbor, and then you have a larger computational stencil, which is shown here. I would also like to point out that since I mentioned that in a pure advection, you do not have boundary conditions at the 2 boundaries, such as in this case on the right boundary and the top boundary. What we do is to calculate the, because I had mentioned earlier that to calculate the enthalpy fluxes at the boundary, like on these green squares at the boundary, and you have green square on this west boundary and east boundary. On the west boundary, you are given a temperature value. So on the west boundary, you can use this temperature from the boundary condition to calculate this enthalpy fluxes at the west boundary. However, at the east boundary, what we do is we apply a first order upwind scheme to calculate the enthalpy fluxes at this boundary. Okay, there are 2 possibilities. since we don't have any downstream neighbor, either we can apply first order upwind or second order upwind scheme. So to calculate the enthalpy flux, the fact that there is no boundary condition, and since it's an outflow boundary, all of you know that the fluid is moving out from this boundary. So on this boundary, if you calculate if you determine the mx will be in the positive direction, and here my will be in the positive direction. So you can apply either first order upwind scheme, which will, so the in first order upwind scheme, the temperature here will be equal to this temperature, or otherwise you can also apply a second order scheme. So you have two possibilities to calculate the Hx on this green square, since you don't have any boundary condition, prescription of any boundary condition. So you can either use first order upwind or second order upwind scheme. So these are the green squares are the grid points for mx, qx, and hx, and they are shown by the running indices here. So if you develop a computer program that is given in the example problem 6.1 corresponding to the companion book, this is a temperature distribution that is given at the, so if you take the geometrical center line, let me go back and show you. So if you take the vertical center line, below the center line you have a temperature 0, and above the center line you have an analytical solution which gives you the temperature 100. Okay, so from y is equals to 0 to 0.5, the analytical solution is temperature is 0. From 0.5 to 1, the temperature is 100. If you express it in a non-dimensional form, from 0 to 0.5 it is theta is 0. From 0.5 to 1, theta is equal to 1. So this is an analytical solution. From y is equals to 0 to 0.5, theta is equals to 0. And from 0.5 to 1, theta is equals to 1. And at y is equals to 0.5, there is a sharp change in the temperature from theta is equals to 0 to theta is equals to 1. So this is the exact solution or analytical solution. And this is the lines along with symbols are shown for the various scheme, where the red line corresponds to first order upwind scheme, green line corresponds to second order upwind scheme, and blue line corresponds to the quick scheme. Now, as I mentioned, you can see that the first, and this solution has been obtained on a grid size of 12 by 12, and this solution has been obtained on a grid size of 52 by 52. So you can see that on a relatively coarser grid, this first order upwind scheme is not able to capture the step change. In fact, there is a lot of smearing or numerical diffusion in case of first order upwind scheme. Whereas even on a coarser grid, the second order scheme and quick are relatively able to capture the step change in a better way as compared to the first order upwind scheme. However, with this quick and second order upwind scheme, you see that there are certain solutions which are less than 0, and there are certain other solutions which are greater than 1. So we have a boundary condition of theta is equals to 0 and 1. And here in the second order upwind and quick, we are getting a value less than 0 and greater than 1. These are called as unbounded solutions. Okay, so the first order upwind scheme has when you apply first order upwind scheme, it has a characteristics of smearing the step change. And when you apply this hard order schemes, second order upwind and quick, they are, although they also on a coarser grid have little smearing, but when you refine, you can see that from 12 by 12, if I refine it to 52 by 52, they are now much able, they're able to capture the step change in a much better way. First order upwind has also improved as compared to the coarser grid. So as you keep refining the grid, you find that for any scheme, the solution approach is captured by any advection scheme. However, the first order upwind scheme requires comparatively much larger number of grid points to capture the step change as compared to the other scheme. However, in this case also on a finer grid, you can see that the second order upwind scheme and the quick scheme has a problem of unboundedness. So the first problem that I presented was for two-dimensional steady state advection, where we have considered zero diffusion. Okay. Now this is a problem corresponding to both conduction and advection, and this corresponds to the chapter 7 of the book on computational heat convection. This is example 7.1, where corresponding to explicit method and flux-based methodology of CFD development and testing on a uniform grid. So let us consider that there is a fluid which is flowing between two parallel plates. This is the bottom plate and this is the top plate. And this is the fluid which is flowing. The left wall of the domain is maintained at a constant temperature T infinity. The top and bottom wall of the channel, this flat plate, is maintained at a higher temperature TW. And this is right boundary outlet. The fluid is entering from the left boundary and leaving from the right boundary. So here we are applying an outflow boundary condition, dt by dx equals to 0. Let us consider that this channel is very long. So when a cold fluid enters this channel, and when the top and bottom wall are hot, and if the channel is very long, what happens is that the cold fluid, the entering fluid which is relatively cold, it will get heated up, and if the channel is very long, finally all the fluid will reach to a temperature corresponding to the wall temperature. We want to take here a problem which has an analytical solution. For a general heat convection problem, we do not have an analytical solution, but we have an analytical solution for some simplified situation. So this is also a hypothetical problem to test the computational heat convection, which corresponds to what we call as flux flow. So let us say that the velocity field that is prescribed is u is equals to u infinity and v is equals to 0 everywhere. In the reality, when you consider flow in a plane channel, there will be a velocity gradient which will set up near the bottom wall and top wall, and there will be a growth of a boundary layer which will lead to a velocity smaller than this u infinity. However, this is a hypothetical problem, as I mentioned earlier. In any computational work, since we are working with theory, we have the luxury to take any hypothetical problem which has an analytical solution. And so we have although it's a hypothetical problem, but we can use this as a test problem. So this is commonly used as a test problem called as slug flow in a plane channel, which has an analytical solution. And we'll consider this problem, and you can this is the code this is problem is given in example 7.1, and we present it in a non-dimensional form where theta is expressed as t minus tw divided by t infinity minus tw. So when we express it in a non-dimensional form, the boundary conditions are also expressed in a non-dimensional form. So if you substitute t infinity here, you get t infinity minus tw divided by t infinity minus tw. So the theta value on the left boundary is 1, whereas if this t is tw on the top and bottom wall, if t is tw, then theta is equals to 0. So we'll solve this problem considering the bottom and top wall, which are heated wall, theta is 0, and at the inlet, theta is equals to 1. Okay, so and the velocity all over the domain, you have u is equals to u infinity, v is equals to 0 as shown here. In this problem has been given, you have to solve this problem corresponding to a Reynolds number of 100, Prandtl number of 0.7, and you are given this densities. So to solve a problem where you have to solve for a certain non-dimensional value, Reynolds number and Prandtl number, which are given here, then if you have written a code which is in a dimensional form, to solve a problem in a non-dimensional form from a code which is written in a dimensional form, what you can do is that to set up a case corresponding to Reynolds number of 100 and Prandtl number of 0.7, you can take this thermophysical property as some hypothetical values. Let us say if you take rho is equals to 1, Cp is equals to 1, U infinity is equals to 1, this height of the domain, this is the length scale corresponding to this problem. So we take this as 1, and you have an expression for Reynolds number, rho u L2 u infinity L2 by mu. So this u2 L2 and rho are 1. So you can take mu is equals to 1 by Re. So this way, if you set these variables, and k you can take as 1 by Re into PR. So what I'm trying to say is that even if, let us suppose you have written a code in a dimensional form, and if you are given a problem where it is asked that you have to use your dimensional code such that the result that you obtained corresponds to a non-dimensional parameter value of Reynolds number of 100 and Prandtl number of 0.7, then this is the common way by which we set our dimensional computer program to get the non-dimensional result. Okay, so this problem has been, example problem has been solved on a uniform grid size of 22 by 12. For this problem, the length of the domain is taken as 20 times of the height of the domain. Okay, so the height of the non-dimensional height of this channel is taken as 1, and the length of this channel is taken as 20 times of the height. This is the solution that has been obtained, which has been given in figure 7.8 of the book. Now the result that is shown here is, this is the variation of non-dimensional temperature along the length of the channel. As I had mentioned, the non-dimensional length is 20. So this is the coordinate along the length, varying from 0 to 20. And this theta is the actual variation of maximum in the temperature profile. Note that the maximum in the temperature profile is corresponds to 1. At the inlet, at the left boundary, you have u is equal t is equals to t infinity, and you have defined theta is equals to t minus tw divided by t infinity minus tw. So at the inlet, you have theta is equals to 1. So the center line velocity, at the horizontal center line, the non-dimensional temperature variation near to the inlet, it is at the inlet it is 1, but gradually it decreases, and finally it will approach towards 0, because finally if you take the temperature variation on a vertical line very far away from the inlet, the temperature is close to the hot wall temperature of the channel. So because finally all the fluid layer will get heated and they will reach a temperature of TW. This is the variation of the non-dimensional temperature along the horizontal center line for the slug flow in a channel. And this are the velocity profile corresponding to, this is a temperature profile corresponding to the various advection scheme. This is the result corresponding to first order operant scheme. This is corresponding to second order operant scheme, and this is corresponding to the quick scheme. Now, this is the red line is showing you the result for at an actual location, non-dimensional actual location at 1. So one certain actual location, which is 1 times of the height of the channel. This is corresponding to 2 times of the height of the channel. This is 3 times of the height of the channel. So what you see is that as you go further in the channel, as you move from the non-dimensional distance 1 to 2, 3, and 5, the center line temperature goes on decreasing, as is shown here. So the red line here corresponds to x equals to 1, the green is x equals to 2, blue is 3, and this is 5. So this has been shown where the analytical solution in all these figures has been shown by line, continuous line, and the symbols are represent the computational results. This figure is shown where the symbol corresponds to the first order operand scheme. Here the symbol corresponds to the second order operand scheme. Here the symbol corresponds to the quick scheme. The point to note is that if you compare this solid line and red solid line and red symbol, and then you compare the green solid line and green symbols corresponding to the location near to the inlet, x equal to 1 and x equal to 2. If you compare the result obtained from first order operand versus quick, so you can see that in the quick scheme, this red line and red symbol, green line and green symbol, there is a much better agreement on the same grid size. Note that all these schemes results have been obtained on the same grid size 22 by 11. And you can see that on the same grid size, which is relatively coarser, you get more accurate solution by the quick scheme as compared to the first order upwind scheme. Second order up, this is the result obtained from the second order scheme, which is better than first order upwind scheme. But among all the three schemes, the result obtained by the quick scheme is the best. Uh, and so if you run on a very fine grid, this is the solution which has been shown, where you can see then the perfect agreement between an excellent agreement between the analytical solution and computational solution. So the earlier these results are shown on a relatively coarser grid, and this result are shown corresponding to a very fine grid, where you can see that this is a solution at x equal to 2, this is equal to x, this is a non-dimensional distance 6, this is at 12, and this is at 18. And where here symbols represent the analytical solution. The analytical solution is given in a book on convectivity transfer by Burmester. So this completes the first part of this lecture, which corresponds to the flux-based solution methodology. Now let us go to the second part of this lecture, corresponding to coefficient of linear equation-based solution methodology. The previous methodology was presented for an explicit method and on a uniform grid. However, that flux-based solution methodology can also be applied for a non-uniform grid. So here there is not only the change in the solution methodology, but we are also including implicit method on a non-uniform grid. So this methodology is presented here for explicit as well as implicit method. And then I'll present the implementation detail, and finally the solution algorithm and the example problem. So as mentioned in the previous topic on computational heat conduction, because we have followed a similar procedure of solution methodology, presenting the solution methodology in the previous topic on computational heat conduction. So for the solution methodology in computational heat conduction, I have mentioned the procedure to calculate a non-uniform grid. So we will borrow one of the equation that was presented for generating a grid where you have a fine grid near to the top and bottom boundary and a coarser grid in the central region. So this is the expression that was presented, where I've mentioned that a non-uniform Cartesian grid can be generated using certain algebraic transformation. And so using the non-uniform grid generation procedure, which was presented in the previous topic, I'm showing you the expression that was presented earlier. And this is a non-uniform that has been generated for slug flow in a plane channel. Now, when you move from a uniform grid to non-uniform grid, note that while using the advection schemes, the weights that you used in uniform grid, the weight here in this case becomes a function of the non-uniform width of the control volume. So just to give you an example, the weights were constant values in a uniform grid, but in a non-uniform grid, they are now, because in a uniform grid, all this width of the control volume were same. So this delta, so this width gets cancelled out and you get the weights as constant values. Whereas for non-uniform grids, instead of the constant values, we have the width of the control volume appearing in the expression for the weights. And note that in this case, the weights are like in uniform grid, when you talk of W1, W2, W3, they are independent on which phases you are applying any advection scheme. And they are independent on which direction, what is the direction of the flow. Whereas in a non-uniform grid, if the flow is in the positive direction versus in the negative direction, you will see that the expression for the weight will be different. So the weight in this case will depend on the phases on which you need the weight, and it will also depend on the direction on which the flow is occurring. So let us suppose if the flow, let us consider this is the slide corresponding to where I am showing you the derivation of the, for a non-uniform grid, derivation of second order upwind and quick scheme at the east face of a representative control volume, where so our objective is to obtain, let us say, T small e, and you have a non-uniform grid. You can see here where the width of this control volume, I will call it as delta xw. The width of this control volume, I'll call it delta xp. This is delta xe, This is delta x EE. Okay. So now the procedure that we use to derive is very similar to what is presented in the for uniform grid. That if I have so what we do is that for if the flow is in the positive direction, if the mass flux on the east surface is in the positive x direction, then I take the upstream of upstream neighbor location as the origin. Okay, so if the mass flux is in the positive x direction, then this is the downstream neighbor, this is the upstream neighbor, and this is the upstream of upstream neighbor. Okay, so we take this as the origin if ME is positive. If ME is negative, then the upstream of upstream neighbor is this. So we take this as the origin. And in a linear extrapolation, we use a linear equation, temperature is equals to AX plus B. Whereas for quick scheme, we use an expression AX square plus BX plus C. So for linear, you have two constant A and B, whereas for quick, you have three constant A, B, and C for the quadratic expression. Now, in a when you have a two constant, you need to involve two circle values, two locations of the circles. In a second order operand scheme, we involve upstream and upstream of upstream. Like if mass flux, if ME is positive, then we involve TP and TXW. If ME is negative, then we involve this is the upstream value and this is the upstream of upstream value. Okay, whereas if you are using a quick scheme, then you also need downstream neighbor. So for if the ME is positive, this is the downstream neighbor. If ME is negative, this is the downstream neighbor. So so let us suppose we are considering the this is positive x direction. So this is x equals to 0. This now here in a uniform grid, this distance which was delta xw is equals to the width of the control volume, uniform width of the control volume. Whereas this, so what I'm saying is in second order operand scheme, we will involve two location of x. This location x equals to 0 and this location. This location was in a uniform grid was having a value of delta x. Whereas here in this case, for a non-uniform grid, the x coordinate at this circle is delta x w by 2 plus delta p w by 2, which is shown here. Okay, delta x. Now here it is represented in upstream and upstream of upstream. So if the mass flux is in the positive x direction, this is delta u by 2, and this distance is delta uu by 2, delta x uu by 2. This distance is delta x u by 2, and this is shown here as alpha. So this location for flow in the positive x direction, this distance is alpha, and for flow in the negative direction, this x is alpha. Now, when this is now this delta x u and delta x uu, note that they depend on the flow direction. When the mass flux on the east face is in positive x direction, then this upstream is delta x p, and upstream of upstream is delta x w. When it is a negative x direction, then this upstream is delta x small e capital U. This capital U is double capital E. Okay, so this way, what I'm trying to say is that the alpha for the positive x direction, this distance is alpha. For the negative x direction, this distance is alpha. And for both of them, since we are expressing in terms of upstream, general expression in terms of upstream and upstream of upstream, this is the alpha location. Now, this beta, let's suppose what we mean is this is the distance from here to here for flow in the x direction. And if it is a negative x direction, this is the distance from here to here. This is beta. If just to give you an idea, the beta here is this the x coordinate here. Now the x coordinate here is equal to delta x w by 2 plus delta x p plus delta x e by 2. Now when you consider, now if it is a negative x direction, then this beta will be the x coordinate here. Now the x coordinate here will be delta x e by 2 plus delta x e plus delta x p by 2, which in a general form in terms of downstream, upstream, and upstream of neighbor is given here. Okay, so these are the locations of the upstream, and the x coordinate of the alpha is the x coordinate of the upstream neighbor, and beta is the x coordinate of the downstream neighbor. Now, what is this gamma? Gamma is the x coordinate of the um, phase center. Now, so if the flow is in the positive x direction, the x coordinate here will be delta x w by 2 plus delta x p. If the flow is in the negative x direction, then the x coordinate here will be delta x e plus delta x e by 2. Okay, so this is what is given as gamma. So alpha is the x coordinate of the upstream neighbor, beta is the x coordinate of the downstream neighbor, and gamma is the x coordinate of the phase center. Okay, so note that in our derivation we need the x location of the upstream of upstream neighbor, which is at origin, which is 0, and we need the x coordinate of the upstream neighbor, which is alpha. We also need the x coordinate of the downstream neighbor, which is presented here as beta, and we also need the x coordinate of the phase center, which is given here by gamma. This is expressed in a general form. Okay, so at x equals to 0, we have upstream of upstream neighbor. At alpha, we have temperature of upstream. Beta, we have temperature downstream. So in this, I am showing you, this is a figure 6.14 in the companion textbook, where if it is in the positive x direction, this is shown that TW is the upstream of upstream neighbor. The widths are delta XW is also delta X E UU. Okay, so this way, this is the upstream and this is the downstream. This is corresponding to the mass flux in the positive x direction. If the mass flux is in the negative x direction, then the downstream, upstream, and upstream changes as shown here. And for a second order upwind scheme, we use a linear expression, and we consider the linear variation not only between these 2 points, but we extrapolate till here. So here we have x coordinate as gamma. So x is varying from 0 to gamma. So we are considering this linear variation from x greater than equal to 0 up to gamma. So now when we, for a second order upwind scheme, we use these two locations corresponding to upstream of upstream and upstream. And when we substitute x equal to 0, t is equals to TE UU, and x equals to alpha. So when we substitute these two, we get A and B, which is shown here. And in that expression, if once we substitute this A and B here, and we substitute x equal to, so this is ax plus b, and when you substitute x, so when you substitute this x equal to gamma, this will become a gamma plus b as shown here. Okay, so in this, if you substitute a and b, finally you end up an expression. Now this expression involves weight, where here I will for second order upwind scheme, you need only weight for upstream, which is represented here by WT, and upstream of upstream, which is represented here by W3. But note that this weight is given for a particular phase, because here for a non-uniform grid, the value of the weight varies from a phase to phase. When you move from east phase center to west phase center, the adjoining non-uniform grid distributions are different. Okay, so there is a locally, you will at any phase center, you will encounter a different different type of non-uniform grid. Okay, so these weights are become much more local in a non-uniform grid. They vary from a phase to phase. They also vary from they also depend on the direction of the flow. Because here you can see, if the flow is in the positive x direction, then the non-uniform grids that are involved, these are the three non-uniform grids involved to calculate the weight. When it is a negative x direction, then these are the three non-uniform grids which are different. So the weights are dependent on the phase, and they are also dependent on the direction. So that's why I am showing you W. So the direction I am representing by plus and minus. W plus, when I write, I mean weight corresponding to the flow in the positive direction. W minus corresponding to the weight corresponding to mass flux in the negative direction. And I have a subscript also. When I have this will be, this is E for east face, N for north face, S for south face, and W for west face. This was shown for second order upwind scheme. For a quick scheme, we have a quadratic variation where x is varying from 0 to so here in this case, as I mentioned, beta corresponds to the coordinate of the downstream neighbor. So this is varying from x equals to 0 to beta, and then we use this three x location, three grid point locations, and we calculate this A, B, C as shown here. And when we substitute in this expression gamma, which is equals to A gamma square plus B gamma plus C, finally we obtain this expression, which represents the temperature at the faces. So this is this slide shows you the derivation of the this derivation is not complete. In the next slide, I will show you the expression for this weights, but this is how you derive. Note that the basic procedure of the derivation remains same. It is just that the to calculate this constant, the distances that are involved here in a uniform grid, you had a uniform distance which cancels down, and you got weight as a constant value. In a non-uniform grid, the spacings are different, so they do not cancel down, and the weights are expressed in terms of this non-uniform spacing. So this is the expression for the weights. This W1 is corresponding to the weight of the downstream neighbor, W2 is corresponding to the weight of the upstream neighbor, and W3 is the weight of the upstream neighbor. This is shown as plus and minus, where when you substitute appropriate downstream, upstream, and upstream, you can get appropriate for plus. This upstream capital U, capital D, capital UU will be different, and for minus they will be different. Now, as far as the faces is concerned, right now I'm showing you a general expression delta S. So for east and west faces, this delta S will be delta X, and for south and north faces, this delta S, sorry, yeah. So for north and south faces, this delta S will involve delta Y. Okay, so for east and west, as I shown here I'm showing you expression for WE. You can obtain similar expression for WN, where you have to replace X with Y, and capital E with NN, capital E with N, and capital W with S. Okay, so I'm showing you a general expression in terms of delta S, where for east and west faces, this S is equals to X, and for north and south, this S is equals to Y. Now, here I'm showing you for central difference, second order upwind, and quick. And the reason I'm not showing you for first order upwind scheme is, you note that for the weights for the first order upwind scheme is same for uniform and non-uniform grid, because in this case you are giving 100% weight to the upstream neighbor. So your W2 is 1, and W1 and W3 are always 0. Okay, whereas for the other scheme, central difference, second order upwind, and quick, you had some here you had first order upwind, you had a constant extrapolation. Okay, so it is independent of whether you have an uniform, non-uniform grid. Whereas in the other scheme, it depends on the non-uniform width of the control volume. Also note that for second order upwind scheme, the weight of the downstream neighbor is 0, so that is shown here. And the central difference scheme, the weight of the upstream neighbor, which is W3, is 0, that is shown here. Now, as I mentioned, that for the east surface, we will take this, and what I'll show basically here is, for east face, I will replace this S by X. All the S that is shown here, I will replace here when I'll show the expressions by X. S is equals to X. So all this delta S will be replaced by delta X. Now, wherever I have plus sign, so wherever I have plus sign, now this plus and minus, I will substitute appropriate capital U, capital D, and capital UU. Such as when in the east phase, what is the upstream neighbor? Capital P. What is the downstream neighbor? Capital E, as shown here. This is capital P, this is capital E. When it is in a negative direction, what is the upstream neighbor? This is capital E, which is shown here. Okay, what is the upstream of upstream? And when it is in positive, in the east surface, the flow is in the positive x direction. It is capital W, which is shown here. If it is ME is negative, upstream of upstream is capital E, which is shown here. Okay, so when you substitute appropriate U, D, and UU, you get the plus, wait for the plus and wait for the minus as shown here. Similarly, you can opt using this expression, you can obtain for this is the weight of the downstream neighbor, this is the weight of the upstream neighbor, and these are the weights for the upstream of upstream neighbor as shown here. Okay, all these are shown for the east surface. You can obtain a similar expression for the north surface by replacing small e with n and small this x with y and capital E with capital N and capital E with N, capital W with S. This is a table corresponding to table 6.2 in the chapter 6 of the companion book, where this expression for the, now I have shown weights, but the weights finally this is the expression to calculate for various phases when the mass fluxes are in the positive x and y direction. So when the mass flux on the east surface in the positive x direction, then you get T plus. When the mass flux ME is minus in the negative x direction, then you get T minus. And when you substitute appropriate D, U, U, you get this expression. Because on earlier slide, I had shown you the expression for the weights. So the previous table 6.2 were for the weights. This table is for the temperature at the various phases expressed in terms of the weights and the upstream. This was the table for the weight, and this is the table for the temperature at the various phases for the positive and negative x direction flow on the various phases. Okay, so when you substitute the appropriate DUU, you get plus values and the minus values, and on each phases, the downstream, upstream, and upstream, they are different as shown here. So in the previous lecture on physical law-based finite volume method for computational heat convection, I have shown you the two different forms towards the end of the lecture, two different forms of the algebraic formulation, where I have shown you the coefficient of linear equation based form, where I have mentioned that we have to use a deferred correction approach due to the fact that if you are using an implicit method, and if you are using a scheme other than the first order operand scheme, then in an implicit method, there is an inner loop for an iterative solution at each time step, and that iterative method does not converge for the higher advection scheme. So we use an approach which is called as a deferred correction approach. So note that this deferred correction approach is needed only for explicit method. It is not needed for implicit method. However, if you are developing a general program or a general software for both explicit and implicit methods, so the formulation was presented also for an explicit method, a general formulation was presented. However, note that deferred correction approach is not needed for explicit method because you don't have any iterative solution in an explicit method. In an explicit method, you have only loop corresponding to time, but in an implicit method, you have two loops at each time step. One loop is for the time, and another loop is you have an inner iteration because the system of algebraic equations are solved iteratively. So for an explicit method, if you use a coefficient of equation based, linear equation based methodology, this is the coefficient of equation based explicit method, you get this expression. So this is the final expression that we use. In a flux based methodology, we use a two-step procedure. So we have I have shown you equations in 2 steps. Here I'm showing you the final equation in the coefficient of linear equation based. And here again, note that in an explicit method, whichever temperature have a superscript n, they are from the previous time step, they are from previous picture. So on the right hand side, all the temperature are from the previous time step, and you can obtain the single unknown that you can obtain from here. Whereas an implicit method, you have a system of linear algebraic equations, coupled system of linear algebraic equation, which you have to solve iteratively. I've shown you the derivation in the previous lecture, and these are the This is the equations for the explicit and implicit, and this is the variables which are common to both the methods and are shown here. Where this is the total, wherever we have superscript there, this is a deferred term considering the advection fluxes, where I have also defined deferred temperature, which is expressed in terms of the expression from the any advection scheme minus the temperature corresponding to the first order Appoint scheme. So as I mentioned, this deferred temperature is expressed in terms of, if you see this expression, there is only a -1 which is coming with W2, because this T deferred is the expression of the any advection scheme minus first order Appoint scheme. So that's why with the upwind term, you always have -1. Okay, with W2 you have -1 term. So this is the expression for T deferred that I had presented. More detail can be found in the companion textbook. So with this, I had completed the explicit and implicit method for the coefficient of linear equation based solution methodology. Now let us go to the implementation detail. So in a coefficient of linear equation based methodology, we follow a single step procedure where we solve a single equation. In a flux based methodology, we had two sets of equations. First for fluxes and then second equation to calculate temperature. So it's a flux based methodology was the two-step process. Here it's a single step. So this is the temperature distribution from the previous time level, and to calculate the temperature distribution for the new time level using coefficient of linear equation based methodology, we solve the system of linear equation independently in an explicit method, and in an explicit method, in an implicit method, you solve it iteratively. So this is the computational stencil for an explicit method, and this is for an implicit method, where these are the loops to calculate the temperature. Here I would like to point out that the stencil which are shown here is for first order upwind scheme or central difference scheme. If you are using second order upwind or quick, it will involve one more neighbor like WW and EE, NN and SS. And you also note that in a convection problem, to calculate the enthalpy fluxes at the boundary grid point, you will use the temperature obtained from the boundary conditions to calculate the enthalpy fluxes at the green square and the red inverted triangles at the boundary of the domain. Finally, the solution algorithm and the example problem. We start with the user input, which is similar to the flux-based methodology. You start with the thermophysical property, density, specificity, and thermal conductivity, geometrical parameter, length and height of the domain. You have to enter the maximum number of grids, initial and boundary condition parameter, governing parameter, which is the velocity field, steady state convergence tolerance, and you have to choose the advection scheme for the solution. For a non-uniform grid generation, note that now your coordinates are not in a uniform grid generation. You only have single geometrical parameter delta x, delta y, but in a non-uniform grid generation, first you compute the coordinate x coordinate. Basically, in a non-uniform grid, you have a non-uniformly spaced vertical line. If you see a non-uniformly spaced vertical line, the x coordinate is varying in the I direction. Between any two vertical line, the x coordinate is constant. So the x coordinate of any vertical line is varying in the x direction, and the y coordinate of all the horizontal line varies in the y direction. Okay, so what I'm saying is, in a uniform grid, you only had a single delta x and delta y, and you were not bothered about any other geometrical parameter. In a non-uniform grid, when you generate a non-uniform grid, first you calculate this x and y coordinate of the horizontal and vertical lines, and then you take the mean of those coordinates to calculate the coordinate of the centroid, where this is the coordinate x coordinate of the centroid. This x coordinate of the centroid, it varies in the I direction. The y coordinate varies in the j direction. So and this is the width of the control volume in a Cartesian coordinate system. The width of the delta x varies in the I direction, delta y varies in the j direction, that I mentioned in the earlier topic on computational heat conduction. So the width of the control volume, this is the distance between the adjoining cell centers. This delta xi varies in I direction, delta y varies in j direction. Using the non-uniform width of the control volume, you compute the weights which are presented in table 6.2 earlier. You compute at the east and north faces, but note that you don't use these weights for the boundary phase center, because you use the temperature from the boundary condition to calculate. Uh, you don't need weights. You directly use the expression for enthalpy flux as a product of density, specific heat, and temperature at the boundary to calculate the heat fluxes at the boundary. Apply initial condition and boundary condition for those boundary grid points which are subjected to Dirichlet boundary condition. Use the prescribed velocity field to calculate the mass fluxes in the x and y direction at the phase center. Then you apply the boundary condition for those boundary grid points which are subjected to non-Dirichlet boundary condition and set T old is equals to Ti for all control volumes. Then this is a step which is different in coefficient of linear equation based methodology. Compute the coefficients and other variables needed for solution of linear equation. This AE, AN, the deferred temperature at the phase center, and the AP naught, AP, and the deferred advection outflux at the cell center. More detail about the data structure of these variables are presented in the implementation details of the companion book. So you need to refer to get a much clear idea before you go ahead with the converting the solution algorithm into the computer program. The next step is solution of the, after you obtain all those coefficients, so solve the final linear equations for temperature, equation 7.13 for explicit and 7.14 which I presented earlier for implicit. Use an iterative method for implicit method where the Q advection, this deferred Q advection is updated after every iteration, and the convergence criteria as this is the convergence criteria that is used for any iterative method. Now this is the stopping parameter that I had presented earlier. So this is for unsteadiness. Note that in an implicit method, you have a loop here for where the convergence is that. And as I mentioned, this deferred correction is approach is needed because in this loop iterative solution, implicit method, if you use scheme any scheme other than the first order scheme, first order operand scheme, it does not converge. So it does not come out of this loop. This condition is never obeyed. The last step is if you check for unsteadiness, otherwise you have to go back to the step where you have a non-Dirichlet boundary condition and continue till convergence. So I'll take the same two problems which I had presented earlier for flux-based methodology. I'll present here for the coefficient of linear equation-based methodology. However, note that here it is, this example problem corresponds to an implicit method and a non-uniform grid. So this is like a flow domain, flow region where in the earlier problem, I have taken the left boundary as 100. Now in this case, let us take top boundary as 100 and right boundary as 0 degree centigrade. In the previous problem, it's a diagonally upward flow. Now in this problem, let us take a diagonally downward flow. Okay. However, in this case also below the diagonal, you have 0 degree centigrade. Above diagonal, you have 100 degree centigrade. If you take the non-dimensional temperature, the non-dimensional temperature at the top boundary is 1 and on the left right boundary it is 0. So this is the, for this example problem, this is the result that has been obtained where this is the variation, this is the vertical y coordinate of the vertical center line, and this is the theta variation. So you can see that this is on a coarser grid and this is on a finer grid. So as shown earlier, that the first order operand scheme shows a lot of smearing in the temperature distribution. So and it's not able to capture the step change. The step change is better captured by the second order operand and quick scheme. However, they have a problem that they obtain an unbounded solution. However, when you refine the grid, you get a much more accurate solution. This solution is on a grid size of 22 by 12. This solution is on a grid size of 102 by 100. So this is the so after the advection, let us move on to the convection, which is the combination of conduction and in conduction we only consider the enthalpy conduction flux. In advection we consider only enthalpy flux. In convection we consider both conduction flux and enthalpy flux. So here again, this is the slug flow in a plane channel. This is presented here for implicit method and a non-uniform grid. So this at the inlet you have a temperature T infinity, on the top and bottom wall you have TW, and this is the outlet fully developed flow boundary condition, and this is a slug flow that was presented earlier. And this is the solution that has been obtained on a non-uniform grid as shown here. And the delta x, the width of the delta x is smaller near to the inlet, and gradually it is increasing because we have a large dt by dx near to the inlet. And this is a solution obtained using implicit method on a non-uniform grid for first order Appearance scheme. This is for second order Appearance scheme, and this is for quick scheme. Here again, you can note that for first order Appearance scheme, between the symbols and the line, especially for this near to the inlet, x equals to 1 and x equals to 2, there is a reasonable difference, but on a quick scheme, they're almost overlapping each other. So quick scheme gives more accurate solution. Second order upwind gives more accurate as compared to the first order upwind. Quick gives better result even than second order upwind. So this is the solution which is obtained using implicit method on a non-uniform grid for the test problem corresponding to slug flow in a plane channel, where the computational result is compared with the analytical solution, which is given in the textbook on convectivity transfer by Dharmistry. Here the solid line represents the analytical solution and the symbol represents the computational solution obtained on 3 different convection schemes: first order Appearance scheme, second order Appearance scheme, and quick scheme. This solution has been obtained on a grid size of 22 by 12, and this result is at Reynolds number of 100 and Prandtl number of 0.7. With this, I have come to the end of this lecture. You can get more details, especially the implementation detail, in the chapter 6 on computational heat advection, chapter 7 on computational heat convection of the companion textbook, Introduction to Computational Fluid Dynamics. And you can get the supplementary material of the book in this website. Thank you for your attention.